Hello everyone, it's Chocolate here. Welcome to my gear recommendations for the month of December of 22. This month we have the advantage that we in the lab decided to release the timelines publicly. So that means for the CB ranks you can just check the actual timelines if you don't have your own and use the ranks that are used there, especially since there's some pretty crazy min-maxes in this CB specifically. So as usual I go top to bottom, and with most of these CB units, just as I said, basically look at the sheet and pick out which timelines you use, then use the ranks and levels as indicated there. So first up, Rima, still the goated PvP tank as usual. R16, which is the same thing for most tanks. So same with Pudding, Kuka, even though those two aren't really all that useful anymore compared to some of the better tanks we're getting now. Jun, R16 unless you're leaving her at R14, or Kuka, also R16, or just iceboxed or CB spec, depending on what you're considering it. In any case, both of those, like any rank above like R7 or like whatever you need to unlock all her skills, is just functions for all the important timelines that use her in this CB. So no need to worry about that. Just any build works. Kaori, R16, New Ray, R16, and with her UE, she's now one of the best tanks. At the moment in BA she's not really all that useful because she's too squishy and the first action taunt isn't as good in the dev teams that are good in BA, but for PA she is excellent, and on attack as well. If you need a first action taunt, especially if you want to avoid the RNG from IO, from her RNG TP drain, that's perfectly fine. And yeah, it's just excellent overall. Pekko, also fantastic defensive tank, especially if you need something to punish comps that have no way to stop her from chewing through their front line and killing everyone, or also nobody to kind of keep her stunned and stop her from stalling out alone, which is also the case with some attack comps where they just can't get through her unless they have everyone alive, and at that point it's kind of easy usually to kill at least one or two important units so that Pekko can stall them out. So as well, R16. Ruka, just leave as is as usual. We're getting to the point where she is usable again soon, which is when we get phase 4 and physical teams are usable on D2, so Griffin specifically. With Twinklewish 6-star, that's where Ruka is useful. Nuya Kokoro, new unit, very nice tank. I really like using her. She's excellent in combination with Rino, both on attack and defense. She just makes certain attack comps against certain annoying BA dev teams much more consistent, so very nice to have her. Personally, I'm kind of turned off from the whole R14, R10 thing. It's theoretically the min-max thing to do, but personally I think it's just fine to go R16 if you're using her, because for CB24, D5, where she's usable to prevent bricks or for the physical comp, she needs 5-star R16 anyway, and if you are on the kind of timelines that use her, or like using her in order, like you're not min-maxing to the point where this is necessary anyway, at least in my opinion. So honestly, just don't worry about it too much. I'm putting it here just for the sake of having it there, so you're informed that this is an option, but don't take it too seriously in my opinion. Nozo, R16, Moimi, R16, Makoto, R16, Kaya, R16, and Hyori, R16, who is very nice, actually very good now, but unfortunately because Nyaru is so good, she sees basically no use unless you're kind of on curb comms, or you're one of the few people who has to use physical on day one. For the top clans, we're not going to use any physical comms. We're just going to triple Nyaru every single attack after day 2. Oninon, R16. Make sure you're farming her, because her UE is coming relatively soonish. Akino, R15. Makoto, R16. Chloe, R15. Matsuri, R16. Vieriko, not used until we get carryover change and 6-star Twinkle Wish, so CP 24, 25, yes, CP 25. Ayane can go either way, but basically not really needed. We're only using her after comp overflow change, where she is one of the best units for really short overflows, where you basically just do one UB with her, hope it crits, and then you get nice 400, 500k of her alone. Tsumugi, R15 or 16, depending on your preference. Doesn't really matter, to be honest. Hiyori, R16. Misogi, R16. Ayane, leave as is. H. Misogi, R16. Tamaki, R15. Tomo, R15. Tama, R15. And Eriko, R15. Those are all basically the same in that they lose P-crit and don't really get the P attack to make it worth it. It's kind of weird sometimes because it's a bit difficult to estimate which one is better, since in some cases with buff supplied, P crit isn't as good as P attack. So it's kind of a balancing act. In this case, I'm just going to say R15, but in the future there's going to be some cases where it's just a toss up, and honestly it probably doesn't matter too much. And it's worth more to watch out that you don't have any tankiness bricks. So yeah, that's kind of what we're moving in here, because most units are either going to stay low, or they're going to be in this state where either it's max rank -1 or max rank, and then just with stuff left off at the worst case. Peko, R16. Kurumi, R16. Jita, R16, Ray, R16, Exilia, either or, depends on what you need, but basically she's not really useful. There's one comp for C1 where she is usable, but that kind of takes away units from Nyaru comps, so it's really hard to fit her in there, which kind of makes it not worth it in my opinion. At that point you're just better off running physical instead. So kind of benched for now, but she will see a few uses after we can change carryover comps. Chrissy, R16. Shizuru, R16. Chrissy, R16. Kurumi, R16. And Mimi, R15. Now Shinobu, R16. Although for her time is basically up now. Like, last CB was basically her last use. Although, who knows, maybe at some point someone finds something again, but I kinda doubt it. Mimi, either or, basically either one works, so doesn't really matter. Mishizu, leave as is. Mahiru, R15. Yukari, either R12 or R14. If you can, leave her R12, but some timelines do need R14. Either for a self boost or for certain other things. Yeah, I predict most are gonna go to R14 at some point, because that's just naturally what's gonna be necessary for more timelines. But until then, just keep R12. And yeah, 6-star Yukari. Basically, if you've used her, you know how amazing she is on attack. She's one of the best tanks there is. And even if you're not using her as a tank, she just does amazingly well against IO devs and on defense as well. Just an amazing unit, and just really great overall for all game modes. Just fantastic, and yeah, not much more to say. Hopefully you don't have to be one of the few who has to keep her 5-star, which is what I'm doing on one account, for example. where I do need to have her at 5-star for one timeline, and hopefully after that I can just ascend her like usual and like everyone else. Moving on, Monica R15, and we're now getting to the point where we kill fast enough that Monica is good in CB even without carryover comp change, and after we get that she's even more powerful because for short overflows she is perfect with her buff in a case where you just need one unit to put on a team without taking up a full unit slot and some other stuff as well. So just fantastic in general. R15. Neon R16, Exnozo R16, Mifuyu R16, Ilya R15, and good riddance, goodbye. Eskauri R16, Saren, kind of special. Basically look at C1 and you'll see why I'm saying that, and why I've also wrote this hardcore CB players should keep her iceboxed for a couple months now, because that's kind of the case where you need her to die, but at the correct timing, and so she needs a very specific rank and level for the CB in specific if you want to run the optimal C1 comp. But otherwise just R16. And yeah, Anna R15. For her it doesn't really matter too much. I'm mostly saying R15 because that's where she's more tanky, and for her, yeah, she's basically just a shredder with some amount of damage, but her personal damage is kind of losing out to what Nyaru can do. Echinobu R16, still very nice to have, especially to snipe these annoying Yukaris that are popping up now. Esmifuyu R15, Kokoro, most should either R10 or R14. There's, especially on C4 this CB, there's certain comps where you really want R10, but mostly R14 is usable as well. It's just a matter of whichever one you have, you'll have certain options and you won't have certain other options. And for next CB, as in CB24, it's going to be a bit different, because to run the best D5 timelines you have to completely break your Kokoro. So PvP chats win on that one. Ayumi R16, Greya R16, as Kokoro leave as is. She's going to see some use again after we get overflow comp change, so look forward to that. Rem R15, she finally gets the accuracy gear that lets her move up without any downside. Ram R15, Rin, keep R14 for CB24. Mitsuki R16, Akari, ideally you want to keep R11 if you still have that. There's certain comps again for C4, the Sea Snake, where you want R11, or sometimes you need R14 depending on which one you're running. I think the ones on sheet are just R11 because the R14 ones are a bit too cringe, but yeah, basically either one should be fine and workable, I think at least. But yeah, just keep as low as possible, but don't be worried too much if you have to go up. Preliminary looks at the first phase 5 CB with Akari 6-star coming in after kind of show that R14 should be generally fine to have. Yori R15 as Saren, still either R9 or R14. There's some more R14 required timelines this CB, so if necessary you can just go up, but otherwise just keep R9 as usual. H Miyako R15, Arisa R16, and R14, just bench until like one of the very fringe timelines where she is used again. Like I think she's used on like 2 more optimal timelines after UE, and then just kind of benched permanently, but still until then just keep R14. Lu R15, or just wherever she was kept at after last CB. She has like one more major use for a loop, where if you can run that it's kind of nice, but otherwise not really too big of a deal, to be honest. So just keep her as is, or if you really want to break her for PvP, just do that. It doesn't really matter, I think. from what I can tell, her next use works at 5-star with like max rank anyway, so who cares. Nenika, R14. She's not used too much this CB because she's like not really conducive in some of the comps that work well, but she's much better after CB24 when we get the lock barrier, and it's more about having two good Nyaru teams that can sustain shred and TP charges. So that's when she's going to be really popping off, but for this one she's just used a couple times and not even everyone will be using her every day. So, but still, R14, and keep her stars low as well. Tiawi, R15, unless you're keeping her low, and now Nyaru. So for Nyaru, the simple thing to do is just 3-star R14 with midlife 3, and with the lowest level you can use, I think it's 136 for the C2 timeline where she's used in, and that's kind of the safest one to go to, and I think which is also the most beneficial for people running triple Nyaru, where after day 2, if you have her still at that, I think you're the most flexible possible, because you can use her on C2 and borrow her on the other 2 teams if you can run triple Nyaru. Otherwise, for clans, there's like, I think 4 or 5 different builds required to use if you want to be optimal, and most clans will end up with like 2 to 3 5-stars, maybe 1 4-star, and like a variety of higher ranks on her, but most people should just 3-star R14 with whichever level you need to run your route. Be very careful about her. Like, I've seen some YouTubers and content creators just very casually break theirs, but you'll see how much of a pain it is to deal with having like a 5-star Nyaru after running a couple CB. So yeah, just don't be like, this doesn't matter, I'm just gonna auto, because it's gonna be a pain if you actually want to run timelines, and you'll notice that, oops, it's a brick for almost all of them, and you'll have to really pick out your routes and how you're going to do it. So yeah, just be careful. Luckily for the first CB, which is one of the more sensitive to her and with the most weird builds, you can just check which ones you want to run and adjust accordingly. And yeah, as long as you keep a 3-star R14, should be fine. You can just borrow the weird ranks and use her on one of the timelines where 3-star R14 is perfect. Now Reno R16, Susanna R16, Susanna R16, and Shiori R16. Basically the same for all the archers. Io R15, just because R16 loses TP boost, and I think there's like 1 or 2 comps where R16 actually makes her lose her timing. So yeah, R15, pretty much required. SIO, whichever one is needed. She's used on C5 this CB, so just pick the rank from that and go up. Suzume R15, and why Suzume? Just keep her as is for now. She's used a couple times, kind of like SIO, where she's used in like one timeline every couple months, like every 2 to 3 months. There's a New Year Suzume timeline, and it's really important to have her low enough to run her with that, so just keep her iceboxed until you need to use her, and should be fine with that. Emilia R15 or icebox, Kazumi R11, and there's a mistake I made. Turns out that some timelines actually, just because she takes so much damage, you just don't actually need any of the TP retain gear, or not even all of the TP boost gear. Like the lowest timeline I've seen is actually just 11.1, where you just keep the top left gear, 3-star refine. So yeah, that's kind of a blunder on my part, but I think for the vast majority of people, R11 is fine, and everyone else who iceboxed her anyway should be fine. So yeah, for now, for the CB, just decide which build you're going to go with. Most players should just be R11 max rank, max level, EX 1.1, and that's fine. Moving forward, there's going to be a few users at 4-star, but that's already kind of cringe because you're locked out of a lot of comps and you're going to have to worry about your Kasumi specs every CB. So yeah, in my opinion, just keep her R11 and don't try to do weird stuff with her. Just stick to the normal stuff unless you're in like a high rank clan, but at that point you're gonna know what you need to do anyway from the clan. Misato, just keep as is for now. Nanaka, R15, she's used on C2, and for that it's fine in either way, but still R15 has more TP boost, so that's fine, because she exclusively needs to be used for her shred. Her personal damage is kind of negligible, so just make sure that her shred can land on time and it's fine. And Yui, either R11 or R12. Most in the future are going to be R12, but for now most people should still have R11, so that's good. And yeah, UE, just I think for most it's going to be fine to have UE5, because that's like the one with the best TP boost per def stats. But I heard some munglings about how UE1 was better for one timeline or something. I'm not really sure about that, but apparently it is a thing. But still, in my opinion, just UE5, unless you're running that timeline. And later on, it's going to be necessary to go up anyway, depending on how much TP boost she needs. So yeah, just keep it low as usual and go up when necessary. Kyaru, R15, Hatsune, R15, Misaki, R15, and now Luna, R14 should be the usual rank. And there's 1 to 2 or like 2 to 3 timelines where R7 is needed this CB, but it's kind of optional. Like for all of those there's other options, but R7 5-star for example makes B5 much more palatable in terms of RNG, so that's nice. But as I said, there's alternatives where you don't have to worry if you have just the standard R14 build. X-Chica, R11 or R12. I think at this point it's generally fine to go up if you're a casual player or like a semi-comp player, just as long as your client still has Virgin X-Chica for later and you're not doing it just for no reason. So if you're running C3, for example, this CB, that's a good reason to go up, but only as much as needed. And that's kind of the pattern we're going to have for the future as well, where she's used as a normal unit, and we're going to need mostly R12, maybe R11 a few times, but I kind of doubt that. Most of what I've seen is just R12, and make sure you leave her skills, specifically UB and S2, as low as you can, just to have as much compatibility for the future. And yeah, hope you have her, because she's really important to have for Nyaru comps. Suzume, not used right now, but for CB24 there might be some use on D5. For PvP just R15, for CB just leave her as is and wait until then. Kyaru, kind of R14 if you want to be safe. Her personal damage doesn't really matter with Nyaru the CB, so it's fine to just make sure she can hit all her timings to get the shred out at the correct timings. Otherwise R15 I think works for all the timelines anyway, so yeah. Aoi, R16, Chica, R11 is what's needed for the C3 loops, but otherwise just keep her iceboxed, because there's like these weird things where she just kind of keeps popping up in certain super fringe loops, but those super fringe loops tend to be really good, and she needs to be very low for that. Like as we've seen before, just 3-star low level R11. So yeah, keep her nice and low and should be fine. Esmaho, R14, Maho, let's keep her as is at the moment. She'll get her 6-star next month, and she will be used in CB24. So look forward to that, and until then, just wait just a little longer. Yui, keep her as is as well. She'll get her 6-star the month after for CB25. And Yuki, yeah, if you want to have a laugh, look at the A5 comps on the lab spreadsheet. There's some really weird requirements for him. I'm running one of those timelines because I have a 4-star Yuki who can run it, but otherwise I kind of doubt anyone was crazy enough to keep him low like that. So yeah, but that kind of goes to show you can never know what kind of weird builds you have to expect. Otherwise for PvP, just R16, and that should be fine for most stuff anyway. Kyoka, R15, she's mostly going to be relegated to overflow comps after we get that change where you can fish for 2 Ice Lance crits, but otherwise she's just benched until 6-star in like a couple of years. H Misaki, R15, and finally H Kyoka, R14, and if you haven't built her at this point, I think it's finally like keep her R12. Maybe there's some use for her like that in the future, but I kind of doubt it. Mostly it's going to be R14. That's it for now. Hope you have some nice holidays. Wish you a Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and have fun doing CB. Bye bye.